Alternative Reality, Volume 1, Chapter 3. The Village of Len, a small rural village near the very border of the human kingdom of Onion. A weird choice for newbies such as Vale to settle in. Higher difficulty enemies, only a few shops, and a low supply of quests. A truly terrible place to start for those who strive to progress quickly. But bad choices in Vale always went hand in hand. Example? His in-game avatar was almost identical to his appearance outside of the game. Why? He didn't bathe for 4 days, was too lazy to comb his hair, and thought that choosing whatever works while creating a character was a smart thing to do. But who would have expected for the game mechanics to play this kind of trick on him? Definitely not Whale. Alternative Reality had a twisted sense of humor. Whale looked around the barely populated ruin of a village. Broken down huts, mean-spirited locals, bored militia. Once he confirmed that no one was attacking him on sight and no shouts of righteous fury came flying, Whale decided to check the losses. By the looks of it, the items he lost were just a few copper coins, some scorched rabbit hides, and his shoes. Frowning, Whale glanced down at his bare feet and wiggled his dusty toes. Well, I need new shoes either way, he mumbled to himself. A side effect of being on his own for far too long. One tended to develop weird quirks after too much solitude. After that, Whale decided to check his status window, since dying does bring other unfortunate setbacks. Whale was level 21. His class? Apprentice Magician. Reputation? Negative 45. And unsurprisingly to anyone, his title was Slightly Sadistic. Among his prominent stats, Whale had a measly 15 in strength, with the only surprising thing in that being that it was more than 0, considering his physique. His fortitude, however, was a whooping 27, which meant he could take a beating or two, and explain why his health pool was at the astounding 1040, a bit on the higher end for a magician class. Now, when it came to his primary attributes, intellect was at a 46, and wisdom at a 39, both numbers way too high for someone as crazy and reckless as Whale. But who said that being smart meant you didn't do stupid shit? With a mana pool of 1065, however, it was no surprise that Whale solved every problem he encountered with fire. He could dish it out for quite a while, after all, with that sort of mana at his disposal. Finally, and unsurprisingly, his agility and precision, both relating to his swiftness in stride and in using light weaponry, were at a paltry 10, while his stamina was at a laughable 400. Which simply meant that maybe he could take a punch or two with that fortitude of his, but what other choice did he have when he couldn't even outrun a retiree with arthritis? Among the less prominent attributes, his charisma was at a laughable 10, but was reduced to 8, funnily enough, by his low reputation and appearance of all things. But on the plus side, his fame was already at 85, which could be both a good and a bad thing, depending on what people heard about him, while his leadership was at a 12. You heard me, not 0, but 12. Who would even consider following him anywhere but to the nearest jail cell, was anyone's guess. After looking through his attributes, Whale released a sigh of relief. It wasn't too bad. He only lost 2 levels, as well as some skill proficiencies. Although the fact that his real-life appearance actually gave him minus charisma still irked him quite a bit. Enough for Whale to discard any sense of self-preservation and charge straight into the nearest shop like a bull seeing red, regardless of the possibility that he might still have a bounty on his head. Seems like someone tended to be a bit reckless when angry. Once inside, he gave the place a once-over. A narrow, cramped room full of junk on all sides, with an old hunch-over fellow staring at him from behind the counter, not a single wisp of hair visible on his scalp. Whale regretted coming here already. "What do you want?" the shopkeeper asked in a croaking voice, with absolutely no effort spent hiding hostility. Low charisma, negative reputation, and an evil title. Neither one of those things helped Vale in bartering. For the first few weeks, it slowed his progress tremendously, to such an extent that he was forced to experiment. But through trial and error, Whale found a solution. He thrusted out his chest, doing his best to work with what measly bone structure he had, and cranked up the outward arrogance to the max. Whale then proceeded to voice a mind-boggling level of insolence. "Don't you bark at me, pleb. I need shoes and some bread. Be quick about it, before I burn this dump of a shop to the ground." The shopkeeper gaped at Whale for a few seconds. "What? You can't talk to me like that! Get out! You're not welcome here!" the old man shouted, once his wits came back knocking, while pointing a shaky finger towards the exit. Eyes glaring, jaw tightly clenched. Who could blame him? Not many would be intimidated by this overly gaunt, torn robe-wearing individual, feigning superiority. But Whale was expecting this. He simply flung his palm upwards and conjured up a fireball. "You think I'm messing around? Who knows, I might just be doing a public service by burning down this trash bin." "Don't tempt me, old man," he replied. A sly smile, a spooky-looking stare, reinforced by his simply ghastly appearance, and a feigned desperation to give back to society. After all, no clear-headed functioning individual would prefer playing this game with negative reputation. Whale counted on this widely held belief, and betted on the fact that even non-player characters would understand this as well. Joke's on them, though. Even Whale wasn't confident in his sanity. Speechless, the shopkeeper was put back into a mouth-gaping stupor for the next few seconds, unable and unsure on how to reply, tongue slithering over toothless gums. This stalemate didn't last long, however, and soon enough the shopkeeper folded. Quickly he scurried off beyond the counter, returning soon after with the requested goods. Success? Well, even got a discount, once a few more degrading phrases were thrown around. Minus 10 reputation. Minus 100 in relations with Len Village. The shopkeeper now hates you and will spread bad rumors regarding you whenever able. Plus 5 fame. Whale eyed the sudden system message with a crooked grin. Maybe he should have burned that shop down after all. He even got some fame and negative reputation, but didn't care much what the village thought of him though. If not for the shops and the guards, he would have already burnt it to the ground. Regrettably, it's quite likely that he'd end up with a bounty on his head after something like that, a big one. Might receive some wicked title as well, not a good kind of wicked either. Whale could still remember all the mean words directed at him the second he spawned here, most of which were pokes and jests at his looks. Not nice at all. Whale was a bitter individual. He held onto grudges and never let go. No wonder he was so avert to the light of day. How could he even see it when there was so much baggage piled up in his head, casting shadows? Thus, he struggled, stubbornly refusing to quit, constantly playing with fire, learning new things and never giving up. The result? A newfound way to interact with his surroundings. Usually quite merciless and detestable, but Whale needed to move forward in any way possible. What he found was that the effect negative reputation had was quite similar to the positive one. The main difference was that you needed to interact with the locals differently. Very differently, if you wanted to get anywhere. Though the method displayed previously only worked when Whale was of a higher level than his target of abuse. Luckily, now the whole village, excluding the rarely patrolling onion soldier, was of a lower level than him. Thus, With lips frozen in a smirk, Whale left the village and casually strolled about like he owned the place, straight towards the dark forest looming due west. Ironically, the forest was called exactly that, Dark Forest. One might think that the company responsible for this game had to cut down on expenses and strip bare the creative department.